like to call to order the Village of Lake Zurich Planning and Zoning Commission for the evening of March 20th, 2020. Oh, thank you. For the evening of March 20th, 2024. So the first thing we need to do is call the roll, please, if you would. Sarosh?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Commissioner Castillo?
Present.
Commissioner Giannini, I have not heard from him, so we will await his arrival. Commissioner Gloaz?
Present.
Commissioner Marks?
Present.
Commissioner Morrison may not be here based on reasons he has provided us with before. Commissioner Muir?
Present.
Mr. Schultz?
Present.
And Chairman Stratman.
Present. So let the record reflect, we do have a quorum for this evening's meeting. So then the next item, as always, would be the approval of minutes of PZC meeting of February 21st, 2024. Are there, Commissioner, any changes, anything that we've noticed in it that need to be hearing none? Then I would entertain a motion to approve the February 21st, 2024 PZC minutes as submitted to us.
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, please, Sarosh.
Commissioner Castillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Muir?
Aye.
Commissioner Gloaz?
Aye.
Commissioner Marks?
Aye.
Commissioner Schultz?
Aye.
Chairman Stratman.
Aye. Okay, then we'll move to the next item on the agenda this evening, which would be, there is no public meeting, so we'll move to public hearing. And then I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for the following application. Application PZC 2024-01 for miscellaneous amendments to the building and zoning codes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Call the roll, please, Sarosh.
Commissioner Schultz?
Aye.
Commissioner Marks?
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Gloaz?
Aye.
Commissioner Muir?
Aye.
Chairman Stratman.
Aye. Okay, so I see no one in the audience this evening, so we won't have to ask them if they want to be sworn in, and we do not need to swear in staff for the presentation, so we'll just have you move forward with the presentation, Sarosh.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. The item that we have on the agenda this evening is to request amendments to the text of our building and zoning codes for the purposes of clarifying and increasing their effectiveness. This evening, we have 4 amendments that are being proposed, 1 within the building codes and 3 within the zoning codes, and 2 of which are within the same chapter of the zoning codes. I'll just go through them really briefly, and then if you have any questions or discussions, we can focus more on that. The first one is to provide for amendments to the provisions of storage sheds, particularly to increase their size from 120 square feet that they are today to 160 square feet to meet industry standards. We find that a number of requests are coming to the village now for sheds that are slightly larger, and so we're looking at possibly just staying up with the times that people want. We've looked at other communities. We see that sheds actually go up all the way to 200 square feet in some communities, but we figured we'd just go with a 10 by 16 shed, which would be a maximum of 160 square feet. In that particular amendment, let me just get to that page real quick. We're also adding provisions for no more than 1 shed, including actual dimensions for separation from other structures for fire protection reasons and access, and then also specifying prohibition on certain uses, like you can't live in your shed, you can't convert it into a living area, and you cannot use it as a second garage, because to qualify as a garage, it needs to have a driveway leading up to it.
If I could,
Yes.
based on the thing you just said, it cannot be a living space. What if somebody wanted to build a man cave or a she shed type thing?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be allowed?
No, not by this.
Not by this?
Not by this code, yeah. We would have to look at it either as a separate accessory structure, because we would have to look at it for electric, water, and whatever else that's needed to have it qualify as a habitable space. Sheds are considered non-habitable spaces.
So we're defining this as right within the terminology of shed.
Sheds only,
period. Thank
correct, yes, yes.
Thank you.
But for clarification, do we have within our codes currently anything for an ADU?
We don't, really.
We do
We
not.
haven't received, I actually, we haven't received any, at least in the time that I've been here, for the man caves or the she sheds at this time. We would not allow a second, like a granny flat at this time in the single-family zoning district, because that would constitute a second dwelling unit on a lot that's zoned for single-family only. So we have to be very careful with that, because those could then turn into rental properties and change the dynamic of our residential zoning districts.
If I may then, so how would we handle a greenhouse?
A greenhouse is just an accessory structure that that comes under the requirements of a shed, because you could go up to 160 square feet as a greenhouse. Now, there is a difference when structures such as greenhouses are attached to buildings. They get considered as a building addition. In many cases, we see that greenhouses are constructed with foundations, they have electric to them, and so they have a completely different set of regulations that they get reviewed under. And in many cases, not all, but in many cases, we see that they are attached to the home so that someone can move straight from their home into the greenhouse. If they are separate, then they get considered under accessory structures that are detached and have to follow these rules of the sheds.
But they're not considered sheds,
They're not considered sheds, no.
but they fall under the category of shed,
Right,
is
right.
what you're saying.
Yeah, non-habitable space again.
Because Costco has at least two
Yep.
large greenhouses, and I know we've looked at
Yeah.
having one that would be definitely detached,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just to understand that greenhouse would then fall under shed.
Right, and 160 square, or accessory structure,
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
under which we consider all of these, we group them together as non-habitable accessory structures.
non-habitable,
Yeah.
okay, got it, thank you.
But if it's a greenhouse attached to a house, that would be what they term a solarium, though.
A solarium or a sunroom or actually not really a sunroom, because sunroom is more of an interior space, a solarium, correct, which is not heated, is 3-season in most cases, and does not have a full foundation. It may have posts buried in the ground to hold it up and anchored properly, but it may have electric. And so that would be the difference between how we treat sheds. Sheds very rarely have been approved with electric connections to them, because they typically don't come with that type of purpose. It's only when they go into the largest scale structures, which then become kind of more like garages or additions to buildings, where we have all of the additional regulations that we need to make it a habitable building or a usable building or a building that has electric leading up to it. Very rarely do we see these structures have water and sanitary, because that's when the whole habitable part comes to it, because that's the only reason you'd want water and sanitary to go to it. But we haven't seen any of those requests come to us, or if they have, we've said, no, our regulations don't permit that, so.
I see we are changing the square footage, but we're not changing the height. The
No,
height
we're
stays
leaving the
same.
height the same, yeah. We see that in most cases, 12 feet is very generous for the height of a shed. We see them mostly at 8 or 10 feet. And so even with the 160 square feet, with the width being the same as a 10 by 12 shed, the slope of the roof would largely remain the same. It's just that the shed's a little longer than it is normally. Any other questions? These are good. This is good discussion.
Thank you, George.
All right. The next code amendment we're looking at is the one which has substantial changes to it, which is accessory structures and uses. This is looking mostly at the manner in which vehicles, particularly recreational vehicles, are parked on properties. We've added a section of definitions to clarify and make clear exactly what recreational vehicles are. And then, in particular, we have added a provision stating that only vehicles owned by the owner of the property that resides at that property, in the case of residential properties, or the owner of the property that has a business on that property, owns a business, or is related to that business, can park a vehicle. You can't park somebody else's vehicle on your property. We're making that very clear. We've added a section, because currently there is no section on parking of these kinds of vehicles on commercial property, because currently the zoning code says that only if you are operating a public storage or a mini warehouse type facility can you park these kinds of vehicles. But we find that from time to time, someone may want to park a vehicle that is related to the business on the property that may not necessarily fall under the public storage envelope, and so we are having provisions that allow that to happen. But again, these are vehicles that are typically traditional and customary to the business that's being operated on the property and owned by the owner of that business or property.
What if they work for a business that provides them with a vehicle?
That is already allowed, parking of
Okay.
vehicles. We have a long list of the
That's
various types
separate.
of, that's
Got it.
separate, yeah.
This is in addition to.
And of course, in our industrial park, we do allow the vehicles off the industries to park on the premises too, but they typically park either in parking lots, or if they're trucks and large storage, rather trailers, we make them go through a special use permit to allow them to park their trailers within an enclosed parking lot that's screened from the street with a fence and landscaping and all of that too. So that is the second amendment. The third amendment has to do with outdoor storage of firewood. This is an entirely new section. We've gotten many different requests, particularly from commercial properties, on how to store firewood on the outside, and so we've actually decided that it might as well be time now to include actual provisions for how firewood is stored on properties. We have very little information, actually just one line in our zoning code for firewood storage on residential properties, so we thought this would be also a good time to clarify how firewood should be stored. So this is relatively straightforward. We didn't have to look too far because a number of other communities actually have full chapters and provisions on residential or commercial storage of firewood. Yeah, ask.
If I could ask you just to go through that for the people who are
Sure.
watching this on TV to have a understanding as opposed to calling up to see what it is.
Exactly. Okay. So the first thing we did was we added a section of definitions. What is firewood? Because some people would say, well, this word is firewood. And so we have actually provided what I would say the general definition that is universally used throughout communities, that it is wood that is used for kindling in a fireplace or a wood-burning stove. It is not really waste wood or pressure-treated lumber that is left over from construction or wood framing components that exceed your average length of a piece of firewood, which is 2 feet, 24 inches. So we included a definition so that nobody could argue with us saying, no, that's firewood. And we're like, no, it's not firewood. Then we provided for locations of where firewood can be stored in residential zoning districts within yards, where in the side of the rear, not closer than 5 feet to any lot line, so that you don't feel the neighbor doesn't feel that all your firewood is like almost on their property. Or if they're within buildings, they could be stored within garages or sheds in conformance with the requirements of sheds and garages in our codes. For non-residential districts, the only way we would allow the outdoor storage of firewood is when they're accessory to a retail trade that's associated with that type of business, which is lumber and other building material dealers, retail nurseries, lawn and garden supply stores, or wholesale trade and agricultural services, which is the way it's classified in our industrial code, related to landscape and horticultural services, where such land uses are authorized by the village through a certificate of occupancy or a temporary use permit. And in those particular cases, the outdoor storage of firewood in all non-residential districts shall be located within specific outdoor display areas or enclosures, as in the case of these types of businesses, or in the rear yards or side yards only, completely outside of utility and drainage easements in the case of, say, a landscape contractor. So that's why we wanted to specify where all of this goes. And then we have some general requirements of how firewood needs to be stored, stacking requirements, keep it at least 4 inches above the ground so as not to block drainage or to harbor any wild animals. And then how big these stacks could be. We're not allowing very large stacks that go up 10 feet and 20 feet, reasonably sized stacks of wood. And then also allowing for when someone cuts down a tree on their property, a temporary storage of the wood that's been cut down, because we know that either it could be cut down for use as firewood and then stored according to our regulations, or removed by the tree cutting company. So we've allowed for that as well. And that's a 30-day period. And then The last section we're looking at is temporary storage containers. This has been an off and on thing that we've looked at for a number of years, and we figured now's the time since we're dealing with this chapter. These include storage containers, the pods that you have on residential properties, as well as on commercial properties where from time to time we have some businesses wanting to store their merchandise during the holiday season, and we just kind of like literally play it by policy or what we've done in the past. So here we figured it would be a good way to codify that. So again, as we have done in most of our chapters, we provide a definition, what a temporary storage container is, also what it is not, and then general limitations, what they can be utilized for, where they can be located, and then also providing some for residential zoning districts when someone's moving, for instance, and they have a pot on their property, where you can put it. In general, we state that it should be placed on a hard paved surface, not on the grass, and should be removed after a certain period of time, and so on and so forth. So we have time period, setbacks, maximum number of containers, on residential, no more than one, on commercial properties, no more than two.
Motion, if I can interrupt just a sec. In paragraph 3, subsection E,
Mm-hmm,
you have 60-day time limit
yeah,
within a calendar.
within a calendar year, sorry, not a yard. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Consecutive?
It may be broken up into 2 periods, but typically we see that if someone on a residential property is bringing in a container, they would want it for a single period of time.
But it's not to say somebody couldn't bring it in, let's say in February, for 60 days and then get rid of it, and then come November, they do it again.
That's in the same calendar year. So for 60 days, we wouldn't allow it. But if they came in with 30 days in January and 30 days in November, yes, they may be able to do
And
that.
let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that they needed to do it more than 60 days in a calendar year.
They would have to then get special permission for a temporary use on the property. We would have to look at the context in which they're requesting this.
But that could happen.
That could potentially
Okay.
happen, yeah. We're
Thank
not
you.
locking them down into this.
No, no,
because
so I'm
we're
saying-
looking at it with a reasonable eye here
Mhm.
to make sure that if someone has a 3-month construction project going on and they need somewhere to put their stuff while the construction's going on, yes, we may allow that.
Yeah,
But
for
only
me, it
on
would be
very,
more,
very rare cases.
yeah, the splitting up, that's all.
Yeah, exactly. We do allow the split.
Okay. Because I believe we have a situation like that.
A pod,
I'm sorry?
a pod, a storage
I'm
pod.
not sure if there's a pod there or not, but it's over in, where the house burnt down, or the house was on fire.
Okay,
What's the name of that
sorry, I don't have the street.
subdivision? It's off of Quentin.
Okay. That
It's
would-
the one that has the brick entryway. There is a house that
Chestnut
has
Corners?
been fenced, and it's been fenced now for, I believe it's over a year. And I believe that they may have a pod there or construction, and when I've asked, because a friend of mine lives down the street, where is this at? She says, well, we don't see where there's any construction, and apparently there was an issue with insurance. But there's already something that is going on that is,
We can
I
look
believe
into
it is well over a year.
Okay.
Is that the one east of
Is it-
Quentin, though?
Chestnut Corners?
It's west of,
Chestnut Corners,
it's
Coventry,
west of Quentin,
Bristol Trail.
and I forget,
We can talk
if you would,
offline, yeah.
yes,
I don't
offline.
wanna
on that.
necessarily name names in public.
No, no, you got it.
public hearing,
But
yeah.
I'm just simply saying that
Yeah.
we have these situations that already exist.
Okay, no, that sounds fine, it's certainly something to look into. But that is one of, an instance where it may be a special case that we may have to consider and work out some sort of plan with the property owner to have it removed. But I think in this particular case, more importantly, we'll probably look at the condition of the house first and make sure that the house becomes habitable if it's something that burned down a short while ago. Because that could be a project that may take a little longer than 60 days to fix, yeah. And that could be considered a construction trailer at that point rather than a storage pod, depending. We'll work it out. We'll look into it, I should say. Any other questions? Those are the 4 that we were looking at.
No.
Okay. All right. This will just allow us to kind of like tighten as the whole intent of this particular One is to tighten some of our property maintenance issues that we are seeing through either communication or complaints from property owners who feel that we need to maybe clarify things more so that there's no gray area on how we enforce our things. So this helps with that. And these types of amendments are something that I think, because we are looking at these a little bit more now, we may bring a little more frequently to you so that we have a little more uniformity with the way we enforce our property maintenance codes. But in the end, I think once we complete our comprehensive plan, which you're aware is still underway, we're gonna have a complete comprehensive look, I guess, at our building and zoning codes to see if there are any more gaps that need to be filled, or clarifications needed to be made, or provisions needed to be tightened. So
right.
that's what we're looking. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sarosh. And within the code that we do we have ours updated now as far as under the general side, which of the building codes that we follow, because those keep coming out with new additions, do we update our code to reference which one we follow?
Very good question. We currently follow the 2012 building codes, and we are in the year 2024. We are now going to be looking towards the end of the year at updating our code amendments, as we call them, to follow, rather before we do the amendments, to follow a more later version of the code. We haven't decided whether it'll be the latest or at least the 2020 version of the codes. We would have to look at all the amendments that we have in place. We would have to look at how the code has changed from 2012 to 2020 or 2024, depending on, or 2022, depending on which one we look at, so as to make sure that it is something that we are willing to move forward with, because sometimes there are changes to codes that are a little more egregious. Oops. I've been getting junk calls all day. Let me just silence my phone. Sorry about that. We just need to make sure that they are not egregious, that places a burden on builders, because at the end of the day, we need to also maintain the balance of business-friendly versus the needs of health and safety. And so that is what we're going to be beginning to look at. The building codes, when we look at it, may not necessarily come through this body, the Plan Commission. We will look at them and then take them to the village board. But if there is something that has a bearing on it, we'll certainly keep you up to speed on how we need to conduct public hearings, obtain testimony, and that's where we might look to the Plan Commission to assist the village with that, or assist staff with that aspect.
All right, good, thank you.
But yes, it's something that we plan to do this year.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay.
Commissioners, any questions of?
No?
All right, appreciate it. Donuts?
Okay. We want to move to discussion? Sure. All right, good. Then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on application PZC 2024-01 and move to deliberation.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please, Rose.
Who seconded it? Oh, you. Commissioner Schultz,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo,
Aye.
Commissioner Glowaz,
Aye.
Commissioner Muir,
Aye.
Chairman Stratman.
Aye. Well, on the firewood, I'll probably get in trouble with my son by saying this, but the thing about the stacking of the firewood, it made me think back to a time when our son was at home and just starting high school, and I had a load of firewood delivered and dumped on the driveway. And so I told him that it was his job to stack it. He calls me at work and says, "Dad, I found out that companies will stack it for you." And I said, "Well, yes, I know that, but they charge for that. Why would I pay for that? I have you." So there are
Is he
options.
still available, or?
All right, so any further deliberations on this from the commissioners?
I don't think so.
All four. No, all four.
All four.
All
yeah.
four.
I think it gives a lot of clarity to what we have in play. And for me, it's just a matter of making sure, is this information somewhere on the VOLZ website that people can go and say, let me plug in firewood and see what the ordinance say? Or parking, what am I allowed to do? because again, we're starting to see a lot of different recreational vehicles or boats or things. Whether, one of the things that I saw here was that you spell out quite plainly that everything has to be on the asphalt
Yes.
as opposed to on the grass.
Correct.
And, I've seen some of that where people have parked it on the grass. And, for me, it's all about that time frame. And if it's
Mhm.
temporary, 2 days, 3 days, I really don't make an issue. But when it all of a sudden becomes perpetual,
Yes.
it becomes more constant. For me, I think the other thing that you clarified for me, even though I think Orlando, you brought up something that, in that thing talking about whether it's a she shed or a man cave or whatever you want to call these things, which are becoming more popular, and especially with greenhouses. Some of the bigger lots can afford to be able to do some of those things, and I'm seeing some of the properties that we're taking in and that they're building, they have a lot more lot to be able to do those kind of things. So it's just interesting
Mhm.
that to make sure that we have it spelled out, and I think that the one you answered was that we don't have anything that addresses the
The man caves and.
the man
she-sheds,
cave
yeah.
or the she shed or whatever you want to call these things, and I think we need to have something there because it won't be long before
Mhm.
that starts to come out, I believe. I know that where I live, everybody has a minimum of a half an acre, and there's plenty of room to be able to do those type of things. And with people doing fire pits and all sorts of things, it's just a logical extension.
Mhm.
I mean, back during the pandemic when those globes were out and you were doing those things where you could go into those things.
Oh, yeah, the
Um,
igloos.
I don't see a lot of them, but you do see some.
Yeah, might as
and-
well provide for them. And we could use this hearing as the feedback that the commission is
Yeah.
giving staff through the public hearing process to maybe institute something even at this stage.
I think it would be,
Mhm.
it would be good for us to start to look at
Yeah.
that and start to see how that could be shaped. And there's no urgency, but
Yeah,
I
we can
believe we
look at
should be addressing it.
Sure, no, we
That's
can
all-
definitely
that's all
look
the
at some
comments I
general
have.
provisions, because we're not looking to create our own provisions, we just look around to other communities, to see who's done what the best practices are, and then adopt those, because
Right.
that's what some people do with our provisions as well. It's just something that's universally done, so.
Yeah, I think back in the day, you didn't have that many people with pergolas, and now you have a lot of
Lot of
people with
people.
pergolas, and then all of a sudden, it's, hey, you know what? We can enclose the pergola,
Mhm.
all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And, okay, it just leads on to something else, and all of a sudden it becomes something.
It's not supposed to be.
I'm just saying it's better to address it now to be more preventative than reactive.
Right, no,
Yeah.
totally understood, absolutely. Thank you for the feedback. Mhm.
Okay. Sean, comments?
No,
No.
this isn't just clarity for clarity's sake, right? I think for all four of these, you said this is to address things that have come up a number of
Yes.
times, so.
Absolutely.
And so, it makes all the sense in the world to me.
We typically bring forward amendments to respond to needs of the community or questions that have come up, or just we've noticed industry standards changing over time, so we just keep abreast of them.
Comments?
I'm good.
Okay. Hildy?
I am good.
You? All right. I have none beyond the comment I made. The only reason I brought up the ADU is because of, people talked about the cost of housing.
Yes,
And so with the increase, as cost of housing goes up, what are the options for people? So I didn't know if we have anything for it yet or not, but it may be something that's going to be something we'll look at in the
we
future.
think it may
because-
come up because particularly the granny flats, where within the same family unit, not to rent it out to somebody else, within the same family unit, they want parents to be close to them or something like that. And many communities are beginning to look seriously at that. And it seems to be something reasonable. It's just that we haven't had such a large demand where people are breaking down our doors saying, we want them, what are you gonna do about them? At least I can say that in my, 7 years now that I've been here, I may have had less than a half a dozen requests for these things, so. But there may be a time when the demand increases and we may have to start looking at these things seriously. One of
I'm sorry, I think it all depend on the landmass that owners have. And
Oh,
as,
absolutely.
and as we start to look at incorporating some of those bigger lots, then all of a sudden, that's where you're gonna start to see it. Not so much on the 70 by 126 lots.
Right, right.
But when you start getting into the 80s by 259s or larger, that's when I think you're gonna see it. And again, I think we're gonna continue to consider annexing property if they ask us, and then that's when those big lots will come in, and that's when I think you're gonna see it. And it's better to have it already addressed now, as opposed to, hey, I'm coming in and now I wanna do this, and now we're scrambling.
Right, no, understood. Also, sometimes we have to deal with a situation where an existing house, an owner comes to us and wants to divide the house up and create two discrete, quote-unquote, units with their own entrances, their own kitchen, own bathroom, own living space, or sometimes turn the basement into its own discrete unit. That is where it becomes a little more tricky, because it's an existing building, the exterior is not changing, and it's very hard sometimes to figure out what's going on the inside when contractors come and go. And so that is something that we haven't seen frequently, but sometimes we do see people upgrading their basement and not getting permits for it, only to find out that the water supply wasn't enough to serve all the additional fixtures that went into that house. So we have to kind of be cognizant about that too as well, so. But as of now, we don't have that as a very frequent issue in the community.
Any other discussions? Ready to move to a motion? I would then entertain a motion on application PZC 2024-01 to receive into public record and staff review of compliance of this application with the zoning standards as presented by staff, and to receive the testimony presented by the applicant and by PZC members and the village staff at tonight's public hearing, and to make these standards and testimony a part of the official record for the application and findings of the PZC, and to recommend that the village board approve the application for the various miscellaneous housekeeping amendments to the building and zoning codes to enhance their effectiveness.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Please
Who
call.
seconded it?
Jake,
Jake and you. Oh, no, who made the motion?
Antonio.
Oh, thank you.
Antonio.
Sorry, I was looking down. So 1 and 2. Commissioner Castillo,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Aye.
Commissioner Gloaz,
Aye.
Commissioner Muir,
Aye.
Commissioner Schultz,
Aye.
Chairman Stratman.
Aye.
Okay.
So this application is then set to appear before the village board at an upcoming meeting in April.
In April?
Correct.
Yes, that's
Okay.
what we're looking to do, as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Any other business or no?
No other business
staff
at this time.
report.
So staff reports, just want to bring you up to speed on projects in the pipeline coming up. We don't have anything formally submitted for the April 18th meeting, so if we don't get anything by the end of next week, which is our public notice posting date, I will let you know of a cancellation, but in the meantime, we'll hold off and wait to see. For May, we have a couple of tentatives that I've had discussions with. One's for a physical fitness facility in the industrial park, one's for a potential daycare at Lakeview Plaza, and then a retail saddle shop that's looking at one of the industrially zoned properties along Route 22. So we have to work out some of the zoning with them. In the long term, we are looking at potentially another dispensary at the former Hawkeye Automotive property, 909 South Rand, right next to Deer Path Shopping Center. Tentatively looking at a car wash right across the street on the apartment building just off of Deer Path Road. Both of these will need special use permits or zoning adjustments. Those are kind of still on the drawing board, but we've had discussions, actually extensive discussions with both these properties, so we might see them in May for all practical purposes. One of them, the dispensary, will probably also go through a courtesy review, so you'll hear about that through the village board meeting agenda as well. But that's what we have in the pipeline at this time. Any questions?
Okay, and then on the, speaking of cannabis, the TGIF property.
Yes, so they are on a deadline. They have to be open and operating by the 1st of July. They've received their permits as of February 1st, and work is going on the interior. They're submitting changes as they go forward, which is typical. We haven't seen any work on the exterior just yet, but they have proposed quite a few changes to the exterior to change the look from what was TGIF to what their new building will look like. So they need to move fast to meet that deadline, is all I can say. It's up to them.
All right, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any comments from the commissioners about any of the
Okay, very good.
coming? No? Okay.
All right, thanks.
I don't think we have any public comment this evening. Seem rather
No
quiet.
public.
And seeing nothing there, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll, please, Saroja.
Commissioner Marks?
Aye.
Commissioner Schultz?
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Glowaz?
Aye.
Commissioner Muir?
Aye.
Chairman Stratman?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
45, thank you.